Hi there. I'm Heather Plett of the Center for Holding Space. This is the first video in a series I've called An Integrated Self, Understanding the Core Needs Triad. I'm the author of the book, The Art of Holding Space. This is my first book. And in that book, I introduced people to a teaching I'd been using for several years based on a lot of work with clients and a lot of research. And it's called The Spiral of Authenticity. And in the Spiral of Authenticity, it's based on a labyrinth journey, which was really about the journey that many of us take in the middle of our lives somewhere where we discover perhaps we haven't been living fully authentic lives and we want to access the core of ourselves and in touch with our own tender hearts and our own authenticity. And in using those teachings for many years now, and the book coming out, I started to recognize that there was something missing, that I wanted to deepen the teaching and deepen my understanding around this journey. And specifically, what it felt like was missing that could use a little more fleshing out was the part that happens before the spiral of authenticity and the part that happens after. Why do we need the spiral of authenticity? Why do we reach that point? And then what do we do with the gift that we bring out of the labyrinth and we begin to return to our villages after this quest? And so the early versions of this, some of you will have encountered in my workshops. I developed this, the core needs, I wasn't calling them at that time, but the needs of safety, belonging, and identity, and how those play out in our lives and how that sometimes causes us to resist the spiral of authenticity because we cling to our need for safety and belonging. And so I've fleshed that out and given it a lot more depth and done a lot of reflection and lots of conversations and lots of research on it. So I want to welcome you, and I hope that there is some meaning for you in the next 10 videos, and I hope to be adding more in the future for our paid subscribers on Substack. In this video, we are going to be introduced to the Core Needs Triad. These are the three needs that are kind of running under everything else that we do. These needs are safety, belonging, and identity. We have other needs, but these are kind of at the core of everything and impacting everything we do in our day-to-day lives. The first one, and if there were a hierarchy, perhaps this one would be considered most critical, is safety. Whether we recognize it or not, our nervous systems are always scanning every situation or environment to assess whether or not it is safe. This is our physical safety, our psychological safety. When we are feeling safe, we have a soothed nervous system and our bodies feel grounded. The second one is belonging. It's nearly as critical as safety. We are social creatures and we need connection. Just as we scan every situation for safety, we tend to scan to assess whether or not we belong and whether the people there will accept us. It's really quite hard to separate safety from belonging because the two are so closely intertwined. When we feel safe, it's easier to access belonging, and when we have belonging, it's easier to feel safe. But this is belonging in a broad sense, with family, with peers, friends, community, with the natural world, with ourselves. It's a spiritual belonging, and it is finding meaning and connection in our relationships. The third, which is less prominent and plays a secondary role, I would say, is to safety and belonging, is identity. Again, it's intertwined with safety and belonging. We're more likely to have full access to our identity if we do feel safe and we belong. And this is a sense of purpose and contribution. It's a source of dignity. It's a unique expression of ourselves. It's our values, memories, experiences, etc. What we are all seeking in life is the highest level of overlap. You can see this is a Venn diagram, and I tried to illustrate that overlap by bringing those three pieces together. This is a well-resourced life. Now, this can fluctuate throughout a day, throughout a week, a month, and even change in a second when something threatens one of those three things. When we are well-resourced and the three needs overlap, our nervous systems are soothed and we have better access to the highest levels of functioning. We're better able to make good decisions. We're not as reactive to outward stimuli. Now, let's go back to the beginning. When you were first born, you started with the two most basic needs, safety and belonging. And infants' needs are pretty simple, really: keep me safe and love me. As you grow into adolescence, you become more aware of yourself as a separate individual, and then that's when identity starts to come on board. Now, the teen years, as many of us know, can become quite tumultuous because of the onset of the identity needs. There is an overlap. We become more responsible for our own safety and belonging needs and less dependent on our parents or caregivers, just as we begin to have identity needs emerge. And so this causes some distress in many of us. It brings up new and unfamiliar emotions, and life gets more complicated. The onset of identity complicates the safety and belonging needs because now they're intertwined with identity. We begin to realize that our identity might jeopardize our belonging and our safety. It's a time often of self centeredness as we discover who we are and how complicated it might be to attain safety and belonging. Let's dig a little deeper into each of the three needs. Now, as an infant, safety felt fairly simple, but as we get older, it gets more complicated. When we dig down, we realize that safety is multifaceted, and I've shown a number of the factors. These aren't the only ones, but these are some that came up for me. We need emotional safety, workplace safety, school safety if we're in schools. We need protection from bullying. We need a source of income and employment, and we need a sense of justice and political protection in the world. And then there's also the safety of needing a stable weather and a safe environment to live in. And we could dig even deeper into each of these. I'm just doing one here as an example, but emotional safety, when you dig a little further, it gets quite complex and nuanced. Within emotional safety, there's a need for trust and love, secure attachment, freedom to make mistakes, and a source of tenderness and room for growth, but also accountability and healthy boundaries within that. Belonging also has many facets, especially as we get older and become more independent of our parents and caregivers. As teens, it becomes more important to find belonging outside of the family unit. And as an adult, our belonging can feel rather fractured sometimes, coming from many sources. There might be belonging with a family of origin, but then there's also the belonging of the hobby group that you're part of, or your work friends, or your volunteer community, or online friends. Or as some of us become parents, belonging is with our offspring. And some of us, it's with pets, it's also with nature, and it's also with ourselves. And thirdly, identity also has many aspects, and we're going to dig further into that in a future video. But those identity needs are things like our beliefs, our source of dignity, our roots, our gender expression, our values, purpose, race. All of those are rooted in our identity. This brings us to the end of this video, but this is just the beginning. In future videos, we're going to talk about what happens when those needs are under threat. How do we respond to that threat? And why do we sometimes find ourselves in a place of having a fractured self? And then how do we evolve? How does our identity tend to evolve over our lives? And then we're going to go into the healing and the growth and the spiral of authenticity and end up coming out to the integrated self. I hope you'll stick around for all of these videos. You can access them all with paid membership at tenderspace.substack.com.